Blog Talk Radio.
Welcome to Last First Date Radio, featuring interviews with experts in dating, relating, and mating in midlife. And now, here's your host, Sandy Weiner.
Hello, everybody. This is Sandy, and I am the founder and chief love officer at lastfirstdate.com. I want to thank you so much for joining us here today. Last First Date Radio is an acclaimed show about achieving healthy, off-the-charts love in the second half of life, and we have an excellent show coming up for you today on a very popular topic. I'm going to be speaking with author Dianne Emerson about how to spot a psychopath before you become a victim. She did tons of research, actually interviewing psychopaths, and I've had a lot of very positive feedback for this particular episode of Last First Date Radio, because one of the things that I am passionate about as a dating coach is helping people stay safe. If you're dating again after the age of 40 and maybe you were in a long-term marriage or a long-term relationship, and now you're out in the world of online dating and dating in a very different way, it's important to learn the new dating rules for the 21st century. And if you're not careful, you can get sucked in by charming people who are really unhealthy for you. Some of you may have been married to those people. Some of you may have been friends with people who turned out to be psychopaths. I just read today somebody's Facebook feed. She wrote that she's been involved with a man for a number of years, and she was actually on this radio show talking about her boyfriend, and she just found out that for the last, I think they've been together for 20 years, and she found out that for the last 10, he's had another woman on the side. So people are not always what they seem to be. That really was shocking to me, but I have a feeling that Dianne is going to say maybe not so shocking. So just a quick note about what I do is I help women over 40 find love, and I help take them through online dating and offline dating and do it in the most dignified way where they honor and value themselves first, because I believe that a woman of value is going to attract her highest quality man. So really value yourself. Don't give up your time for somebody who's not worth it. Don't jump through hoops to make somebody happy if it's at the risk of your own unhappiness. That may sound crazy to people who don't do this, but believe me, this is very, very, very common. So we often do things that sabotage our dating success, and because of that, I have identified the top 3 mistakes that midlife daters make, and I give actionable tips to turn them around so you can find love. And I've created a free guide, and if you don't yet have a copy, go to lastfirstdate.com and sign up right on my homepage. Also, if you are a woman over 40 and you're not yet a member of my Facebook group, Your Last First Date, it's called Your Last First Date on Facebook, please join us. I have over 500 women in the group, and they come to get solid advice to stay safe, to date with dignity, to date with self-respect, and to be a woman of value throughout their dating experience and really throughout their lives. And now I want to introduce our special guest today, Dianne Emerson. She created the first online support forum for victims of psychopaths over 18 years ago. She had discovered many things from the victim's perspective over the years, and she wanted to learn more about how psychopaths operate. Psychopaths seek out a specific type, and many times victims can be victimized several times over their lifetime. Her goal is to inform the public about how they get trapped in these relationships, how to spot them before it goes too far, and to identify things that happened in past relationships. So join us now to learn how to spot a psychopath before you become a victim. Welcome to the show, Dianne.
Well, thank you very much, Sandy. Thanks for the kind introduction.
My pleasure. Thank you. So Let's get down to it. So you say that many times people are victimized over and over again. So what kind of person is targeted by a psychopath?
Well, usually they do seek out a profile. In my book, I interviewed 3 male psychopaths because I wanted to. We know what they are. Okay, we know that they're liars and cheaters and all that. And you can look up lists online. But what I was not really getting from the victim side that I thought would be important for people to know is how they do it. In other words, what tools do they use, and specifically, what kind of person do they look for? And so in answer to that first, they look for kind and caring people, and which is a really good thing to be, okay? But the number one thing that victims have said over the years is that they ignored the first red flags. And so they look for a type, and the type is somebody that they would be able to control. Control is the end of the whole cycle of what they're going to put you through. And when they described in my book the methods they used, I must say, I started out to write about it and thought, well, if I don't find out much, then that's okay. But if I do, I'll publish it. And I was actually just flabbergasted. And what I did was I only interviewed them in writing because they mimic behaviors and they feed off your emotions and your responses to things. So I wanted to I felt like I really got closer to the truth than probably ever before, because if you read a victim book, you get what happened to the victim, the pain, the heartache, and the betrayal and all of that. But what you don't get is the methods, the specific methods. And so I was actually, at times I must say, I was stunned about the actual, how self-perceptive they are, how they plot to find victims, what they do with you, how to convince you that they use gaslighting, which is a form of altering the reality so it appears to be a fact. And that was their number one tool. So, and then also my concern has been that with all this online dating, really, it's kind of the psychopath highway, if you want to know, because there's a lot of ways. And if I was looking for love, I think I'd be right on your doorstep, because it's if you watch those Dateline shows, where did all these people meet? Well, Match.com, Christian Mingle, and what was the end result? Well, usually there's a murder, but the ones that I have found the most interesting are the ones who will probably never end up in prison. They're the ones that, to me, are the much more dangerous ones because they're much more skilled at their behavior. So, if you want to avoid the Dateline trucks and Keith Morrison hopping out with his notepad, you probably would be well advised to work with a consultant. Because I know, even after all I know about them, I would just not join a dating service. It wouldn't be for me unless I had somebody to help guide me.
Well, so yeah, when I started online dating, I was pretty clueless myself because I wasn't yet a dating coach and I hadn't done all the research that I've done or worked with as many people as I have. But what I find is, number one, be informed, which is why I do this radio show, and it's why I interview people like you, because this is such valuable information, and it is the nice people. I get all these really kind people pleasers in my practice, people who always bent over backwards to please others, and so they don't imagine that anybody would be as evil as these people are. It's not even in their stratosphere.
No.
And right, so that there's a naivete to begin with, and the other thing is the ignoring of the red flags. So I want to talk about that because that's some of the work I do with my clients, is to have them go way back, and because they often say the red flags were not even there. It's that there was nothing, and I say, well, go back again. What small flags? What were the little signs that made you feel sick to your stomach, but you pushed it away? Because your gut knows, your gut really knows, but you go, that's nothing, because he's so good looking and he's smart, he has a good job. They make lots of excuses. So
he listens to me. He listens to me like nobody else did.
Right, because he's mirroring, right? He's mirroring their
he's
behavior.
Mirroring you, and like they said in my book, when I walked them through the whole process to get their answers, and it was interesting because they would start off the answer with what they probably would use as their approach to you in person, but then it would wind down to what the reality was. And they said, which was interesting, is that if I don't listen to you, how do I find the keys to your safe? So listening is what they're very good at, because they're mining you for information. So people think, wow, this was really, and it could be a female too. It's not restricted just to men. People want to be heard. And so there's always a tendency, and it's kind of a global problem, because people could watch, look at the most popular shows on TV. Dateline, we all watch these shows, and, about the guy next door who had been having an affair with his wife for the last 20 years, and all of a sudden, she starts to leave him, and, things become unsafe. She ends up dead, and the Dateline trucks are there. So so we seem to be drawn like moths to a flame for these stories, but there's a huge disconnect in stopping and thinking, this could be me. So we're attracted to these stories. We're attracted to the concept of watching evil play out on the screen, but yet we seem to miss the step in between, that in order for evil to get into your life, the really good ones can mask that behavior for a very long time. Because really, if somebody walks up and starts behaving crazily, you're going to move away. So there's a whole grooming process that takes place. They're in it for the long run, and the long run is to control. So, we just have a pretty big disconnect. So being a nice person is a really good thing, but being a nice person with good boundaries is an even better thing. There's signs. There's signs.
That's primarily what I teach, is how to have clear boundaries, because if you don't know what your boundaries are, then people will step all over you. And, I teach it to my kids. I teach it to my clients. I have a book about boundaries and dating. It is so critical to have clear boundaries. So, okay, so we have these nice women, and they're bait for these psychopaths. And so, what's a boundary that you can name that could stop a psychopath in its tracks, in his or her tracks?
Well, for me, I would pay attention to the first interactions. Are they asking a lot of questions? Has the evening ended up like almost one would be in a therapy session? Like, have I talked the whole night about, my alcoholic father and all these things that normally I wouldn't share with somebody right away? Am I oversharing? And the reason you'd be oversharing is because this person is intently listening and asking you the right questions. So I would start to look for somebody who is asking you to overshare, moving in too quickly. A lot of old sayings, seems too good to be true. And really, these guys don't even have to be attractive, because their persona can overtake even bad looks. Bad personal hygiene and stuff. Attractive women can get caught up in a guy who's kind of gnarly looking, but because of that charm, that charisma, did you remember that Rockefeller guy that played like he was a Rockefeller? I don't want to get into the whole story, but he ended up marrying a woman while he was playing like he was a Rockefeller, and they eventually got him on some murder from years before that. But anyway, he played like he was a Rockefeller. And he played it perfectly, because what he did was he even rescued abandoned, injured animals, because that gave, and people think, oh, well, over the years people say, well, I don't think he's a psychopath because he loves his dog. Well, you may be perceiving that he loves his dog, okay? So he would use that as a trap. And he actually, the woman he married, and there was a custody deal. It really got ugly, and she was knocking in. This was 20 years ago, $500,000 to $1 million a year in the stock trade. And when she was on the stand, what really got me was she was, clearly kind of embarrassed that she'd been with this guy for a while and had a kid with him. But if you really want to clutter up your life, rush into having a kid. But anyhow, so what she said was, he really listened to me. Okay, all the guys in
Mhm.
her field. So here comes this guy without really any real means of support, but this big lie about being a Rockefeller. But her takeaway was, he listened to me. They listen to
Yep.
you because they have to have information to then damage you with later. Like, for example, if I were to say my father was an alcoholic, okay, later in the heat of an argument, they say, you come from a lousy family. Your father was an alcoholic. I don't know why I wasted my time with you. So
Mm.
all this information that they're mining is what they can use to poke with swords in your back when things start going rough. So it's actually quite a fascinating process that they use, and it can become actually dangerous. I mean, not all of them are going to kill you, but really, if you're going to go through a breakup, I wouldn't be under the same roof with them. I would consult somebody and get out safely. So it all doesn't lead down to the path of death, but it can lead to the path of a murder of your soul. So my feeling
Yeah.
is that a good psychopath will actually damage more lives in his or her lifetime than the most prolific serial killer around, because
Mm.
it goes on and on and on. I mean, while they're in a relationship with you, they'll be having multiple relationships. And, if you try to bring up these questions, they have a way of diminishing you. It's all down. They have a whole process they use. So what the whole goal is to, pretty soon you'll be thinking you're the crazy one in the room because you questioned this person. And then the
Mhm.
gaslighting starts. So they have a whole system, which that's what I found so interesting when I was interviewing them, was how they have this whole process down. I mean, some of them I had actually kind of brushed off because over the years, a couple of people had said, "Well, he told me he has a dark side." Well, they said the same thing, and you know what the response was? Well, if somebody tells you something, it's probably not funny. And I'd heard victims say that over the years, even down to a
Mhm.
few of them use the, well, I can't tell you about my past because I was with the CIA. And, we can laugh about this stuff now, but we're not several months into a relationship. So this person is believing this stuff. And actually, they gave me lists of things that they use. And so when you challenge them, I mean, really, one of them was an abused childhood. Okay, so let's say you get an argument with this guy because he didn't show up like he was supposed to, and you know for a fact he was having an affair or something was up. Okay? So you go to have a talk with him, or an argument breaks out, or whatever. Well, when they pull out the abused child card, I mean, what's a kind and decent person going to do?
Mhm.
Really, you don't understand me, my blah, blah, blah. I mean, they are always the victim in any story while they're victimizing you. So they
Mhm.
have a good way of turning on their heels and getting you to buy into this altered reality. So, clearly I am selling books because I want people to know, if you see one coming, get away, and if you're in one, how do you get out? And if
Mhm.
you read their own words, you will start to identify the patterns, whether it's in a relationship or at work. You will then know that you're dealing with a very unhealthy person because that's why I interviewed 3 at the same time, because I was looking for patterns. I didn't want to just go with one and say, oh, yeah, okay, got it. And they were all in different parts of the world. So I wanted to know how close to reality each one of them was reporting. Because it would seem irresponsible just to talk to one of them and go, oh, yeah, got it, understand how they work. so, like,
Mhm.
for example, when I brought up the gaslighting to them, they were like, they rushed off and Googled it, and they came back and they go, oh, yeah, that's like the favorite thing for me to do. Like, oh,
Oh,
okay.
they're proud of that.
Oh, very proud, very proud. As a matter of fact, one
Mhm.
guy was so evil that if the breakup happened in a way that he wasn't happy, he would circle back, re-engage the person, and then crush them to smithereens before he took off. So yeah, they're happy. They find that very 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 pleasing to them to crush people, and so people tend to want to stay in a relationship, and everybody wants to relive their early good times, okay? And the early good times were just that, the early good times. So people have to learn to look beyond that. You can't keep looking at, well, the first few months were fabulous. He was all these things. So what if he got a little bit off the rails and got a little bit nasty? He was really nice to start with. And that's where you start to really wander down the wrong road. You've taken that fork in the road, and you have then started running uphill with it. Changing.
So a lot of the things that yes, that's true. You don't change people, and that's something that I also teach to my clients, because people go in saying, well, he's a good guy except for this, this, and this, but I'm going to change him. And if there's one thing I learned post-divorce, it's that you need to accept somebody for who they are right now. And people can work on behaviors, but they don't change character. And
they'll tell you they're going to change. I mean, they will give you. They methodically, if you read my book, they have an answer for everything. Okay, they will convince you about all the ways that they're going to change. They will be very convincing in that aspect. So yeah, it's you're not going to change somebody.
Right, and a person with boundaries is a person who says, "Show me." Show me that you're going to change. Where's your therapist appointment? Let's talk in 6 months when you have, been in therapy, and you show me with your behaviors that you're consistently different than you were.
Frankly, Sandy, you even have to be kind of cautious of that. Because let's say you have money and he doesn't, but he gives the image of money, but he's really after your wallet, okay? He might go through, if he's clever enough, he might go through all those steps. I mean, there's been cases where they will convince the therapist that you're the nut in the room. So they could possibly still turn that one on its ears.
Right.
So,
I mean, we're talking about psychopaths here. No, it is. You're playing with different rules. And what happens, though, is it sounds like a lot of these qualities are also present in narcissists and other people with personality disorders. So how do you really differentiate a psychopath from other evil beings like narcissism?
Yeah. Well, Dr. Gakono is like the leading expert for evaluations in the industry, and he wrote the foreword to my book and really laid out the sociopath, psychopath, all that thing. But I'll give you just the Reader's Digest clip. And all narcissistic people aren't psychopaths, but all psychopaths are narcissistic personalities. Narcissistic personalities is an acquired personality trait. Think selfies, okay? Psychopaths are born. They have the gene. And the other rough part to think about is if you think having a kid with one of these guys is going to heal the relationship, what you're doing is you're bolting yourself to this evil person for the next 30, 40 years. And you also run the risk because all three of the people I interviewed got the gene from their father. So they don't know enough about does it skip a generation or doesn't, but really, let's say you have 2 or 3 kids, and I'm not trying to scare people to death, but let's be realistic here. You're going to chain yourself to an evil person by even having 1 kid. The more kids you have, you're probably multiplying your chances that one of those kids is going to be a budding psychopath. And then the defining line is they don't have a conscience. We have a conscience, they don't. So they will never, ever develop a conscience. The smarter ones will develop the appearance of a conscience. They will know how to behave in certain ways. Like they say, they learn what buttons to push to get what goal. So they will learn behaviors. Like if you watch like a Dateline show, the first part of the show, the detectives are like, well, the guy really didn't show much emotion, okay? But in the end, when he gets sentenced to life in prison, he's crying like crazy. Well, because he's a victim. He's playing the victim. He's sorry for himself. He's not sorry for what he did. So because they emulate emotions, they're really good readers. So that's a basic difference is the conscience. That's where the real dividing line is. They don't have a conscience, which forms between the ages of 3 to 5. They will never get a conscience. The people that I interviewed were raised by people who really spent time with them. One of them in particular, probably the most dangerous one, most charming and all of that, I think that their parents spent a great deal of time socializing them. So there you get into the non-socialized ones probably come from lower economical backgrounds, okay? They're the ones who are going to be the 25% of the prison population. The socialized ones learn behaviors and how to fit better into society. So they're probably going to be running a big organization or appear very successful on the surface, have money, maybe inherited or whatever. So, and they're the ones that I've always found the most fascinating because they're the ones that are running loose. I mean, the chances are they're probably not going to end up in prison. So they have, they fit into society, and they say 1 to 3% in the general population. Well, that number was taken from a study 20 years ago where they identified 25% of prison inmates are psychopaths, and then they just extrapolated that 1 to 3%. And I'm not a researcher in that regard, so all I can say is I think that number is way, way, way too low.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's much higher than we probably want to believe. And one of them said the scariest thing that keeps rattling through my brain in all these years, because I spent like 3 years on my book, is that he said, you know what, he goes, society is becoming more like me than you. I mean, that's something to think about. So, so I think safety is the key. And I think that you have a valuable service because, frankly, you would never catch me unguided logging on. I mean, I live alone now, but I'm not lonely. There's a difference, okay? So I'm not in any – I have no desire unless I had somebody like you to help me, and I know quite a bit about these people, probably more than most people. I would not – you wouldn't catch me just logging on to Match.com. It just wouldn't even enter my thinking.
So
I'm very selective.
I hear you, and the problem is that as you get older, your chances of meeting people in real life become smaller and smaller, and online dating helps people find love every single day, all day long, every single site. So it works, but you have to be smart both online and offline, and like you said, it can show up at work, it can show up any place in your life where people have charm and charisma, and they use collateral to throw back at you in times of need and where you're the weakest. And, there's one thing in my marriage, and I was not married to a psychopath, but one thing that really but it was so damaging was the constant throwing back, my childhood versus his childhood. And the truth is that his childhood was very damaged, and he had no idea. He was in total denial most of his life. So it's a very interesting thing. I also dated somebody who was very manipulative, but I was aware, and I went in with my eyes open because he was fun. And there were other things that were saving grace. He was not a complete manipulative psychopath, but he definitely was narcissistic. But I went in with awareness. So our narcissists can be really interesting, fun, exciting, sexy people. And there's a lot of boring people out there when you start dating too, that people you just don't connect with. So my whole thing is, go in with eyes wide open and keep your legs shut for as long as you can, because once you start with, having sex, you lose yourself. You lose yourself through your hormones that get released, and then you bond with somebody in ways that are very hard to disconnect from.
Well, and also one thing to keep in mind is one trait all these people have, either male or female psychopaths, is a prolific sexual life, okay? So they have multiple affairs, and it doesn't matter really if it's gay, straight. One guy I interviewed, he was married because of the image thing, because that gives you a better image, and also had a dog. So dispelling those rumors. And he would invite, him and his wife came to an agreement they would invite women, but only one time into the bedroom, and men also, because it doesn't matter to them. And the thing that you always have to remember is you're sleeping with everybody they're sleeping with. So if you've got a cat on your hand that's had a huge sexual activity throughout their life and stuff, and multiple affairs, hey, we all have a past, okay? But these guys are really, really big on that game, okay? They'll sleep with anything walking within an arm's distance. So you're opening yourself up to a lot of personal damage.
Right.
So it's something to be avoided, really.
And
it's not
go
to say
in
we're
with
trying
eyes
to be
open.
prudes. Yeah,
Yeah,
and
and
you really, they
well, I
have
just want to
answers
say
for
that
everything.
right, but so a lot of women, and in particular, will feel flattered by the attention they get from someone like this, and again, that goes back to the self-esteem, to the fact that if you have low self-esteem, but you're a kind, caring person, you're naive, you have poor boundaries, you maybe had an abusive childhood, you're vulnerable. Those are the victims' profiles, and so that's the work that the victims can do, is to increase
Well,
self-esteem, increase your boundaries.
also, you could be a very highly paid executive. It's just that you spent your career working, so you really haven't been in the field with a lot of people. So you can have pretty high esteem at work and pretty low esteem in your own personal life. I mean, you can have that get up and go to get you to the top of the food chain in a big corporation. But when it comes to dating, people will be kind of afraid to date you because you have more than they do, or a lot of reasons. So, really, they're equal opportunity abusers. I mean, they don't, they're looking for a type, but they're equal opportunity abusers. And they will always have a reason for everything. I mean, they're down a little bit in their money right now, and they have all these things that, they're very good. So that's if it's too good to be true, step back, because it probably is too good to be true.
Oh, I totally agree.
Nobody likes people more than me, and I'm a writer, so it's a very solitary kind of existence. And I'm not complaining. Don't get me wrong. I get out, I moved to the Midwest to write, so I know about living alone because I needed a place of silence and no distractions, and it's just a time in my life I just needed to pick up and go get the book done, and that's what it was going to take. So I'm very careful of who I let into my life, and I'm perfectly fine. I'm not saying I'm not open to a relationship, but when it comes along, that will be fine, but I'll always be watching. And I know that it can make me start to sound kind of paranoid and suspicious, which I'm not. I mean, nobody likes a good joke more than me. Nobody likes to entertain more than I do. But you know what? I'm okay. The last few years, I know people in this little town, but I'm a blue person in a very red state. So, I know people, but I'm not social. I no longer really have dinner parties and stuff, but that'll come later. But I'm okay with that. I'm really okay with that. I just, I function just fine. Just to get somebody into my life in the possible chaos, I would really be very careful. Very careful.
Yeah. Well, I think everybody should be careful.
Yeah,
it's an important.
It's a dangerous sport. Dating can become a very dangerous sport.
You have to balance your heart and your head, and that's what I always tell people. It's not about being so closed off that you don't open up to anybody. But you do have to go in with your eyes open, and if you do want love, it involves some risk. But the more you know, the better off you are. Dianne, thank you so much. Yes, thank you for coming on the show today. And can you tell everybody how they can find your book?
Yeah, the easiest way is if you just Google me. It's Dianne with 2 N's. That's the key. Dianne Emerson, Emerson. And it's available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and Apple. But the easiest route is just to go look on Amazon, and it's available in paperback or e. I kind of recommend the paperback just because there's a lot packed into there. It's over 300 pages of my conversation with them. And so it's available on Amazon. You can Google me. I'm not a big social media person, but you can Google my name and just remember it's the 2 N's in the Dianne. And the book title, if you're looking on Amazon, is Psychopaths in Our Lives, My Interviews. And I'm really proud of my work because no one's ever gone in this direction before. They've always used composite characters, and that falls flat. That doesn't really tell you exactly what's going on in their little minds as far as what they're plotting and how they're doing it. And I think that, the comment so far has been, wow, that was the creepiest book I've ever read. But, that's okay because it is creepy. I didn't change any of their words. I obviously had a professional editor. I didn't change any of their words. I just let them speak. And one of them followed me for quite a while prior to publication, emailing me to check in and stuff. It's like, yeah, okay. And he finally asked me, I knew he was up to something, and he finally asked me, he goes, am I going to be upset when your book comes out? And I said, well, the only reason you would be upset is because of something you said, because I didn't change your words in any way. So, because that's the real beauty, and when you read what they say, because you get an insight in how that brain is ticking, how they twist things around, how they reword things, and so yeah, I didn't do anything to change any of their words. I mean, so yeah, he disappeared after that. None of them are speaking to me anymore, which is okay.
Well, he is.
Which is okay.
He's a psychopath. Well, thank you so much for informing us today, and I hope that you've made a few people that much more aware of the dangers of being with a psychopath so that they cannot be a victim. Thank you all for listening today, and I hope you all go on your last first date very soon. Have a great day.
Thank you, Sandy.